Adherence to 1987 constitutional processes is upholding the rule of humanitarian law and not of men. If you will revise the Constitution, what part of it will you revise for the sake of what we so-called gender preference and sexual orientation? I'll repeat. Adherence to 1987 constitutional processes is upholding the rule of humanitarian law and not of men. If you will revise the Constitution, what part of it will you revise for the sake of what we so-called gender preference and sexual orientation?
Okay. Wow, that's a hard question since I'm not so familiar with the Constitution, to be honest. But ladies and gentlemen, if I will revise the Constitution, of course, talking about the gender and talking about LGBT community, I will inject the specific gender basis or the specific gender thing in order for us to be able to uplift the protection on our LGBT members or LGBT brothers and sisters. Why? For example, with the Bill of Rights, everyone actually see this as general. And that's the main reason why people tend to somehow separate the LGBT people or LGBT community. If we will going to at least put a specific section for LGBT members or LGBT brothers and sisters, adherence for the protection of these people, one thing is for sure, we can make this world better for all LGBT members. Values. Why? Ladies and gentlemen, throughout these years, we have been taught to be kind with all people, with all brothers and sisters, regardless of what kind of gender there is or what kind of gender you have. Unfortunately, guys, this is not what's happening in our world today. Look what's happened or what is happening with the humanity. Ladies and gentlemen, because of this gender preference, we are actually separated by this thin line called differences. And that's actually something that I would like to highlight with my speech. If the Constitution relies or reviewed and a lot more focus on LGBT member, then one thing is for sure, everyone will be happy. Why do we need protection? Because straight men and women does not need to have. Why? Because they do not actually experience criticism just like LGBT members experience. And that's the reason why I would like to empower sections for LGBT members or LGBT brothers and sisters. Ladies and gentlemen, always remember this. The reason why I would like to do this is because of equality. Difference in appearance and difference in gender does not make any person better than the other. If we know how to actually accept and embrace these differences, one thing is for sure. Constitution-wise, Philippine rule, we can make it better. Thank you.
And not of men. If you will revise the Constitution, what part of it will you revise for the sake of what we so-called gender preference and sexual orientation? I will repeat. Adherence to 1987 constitutional processes is upholding the rule of humanitarian law and not of men. If you will revise the Constitution, what part of it will you revise for the sake of what we so-called gender preference and sexual orientation?
So tough. Can you repeat it again?
Okay.
Sorry.
Adherence to 1987 constitutional processes is upholding the rule of humanitarian law and not of men. If you will revise the Constitution, what part of it will you revise for the sake of what we so-called gender preference and sexual orientation?
Okay, thank you very much for that very mind-boggling question. In terms of this constitutional law, what do I think we need to revise in order for us to sustain a global equality? I believe, ladies and gentlemen, that each and every one of us is capable of having equality within ourselves. We are capable to experience equality, not because of our gender preference and not because of who we are in this world. Rather, I would never ever revise any of it, because as what you said, as the humanitarian law, not just for men. Therefore, this Constitution is not only for men, but for us, humanity. Therefore, there is no right for us to revise any of this constitutional law for as long as any one of us has its own intellectual mind to know what is right from what is wrong. Therefore, the main instance is this: we should need to respect one another, not because he is gay, he is lesbian, or he or she is straight man or women. Rather, we are all equally in the spirit of God. We are all equally creations of God. With respect, with our gender preference, that is the main key. We never ever had the chance to revise this constitutional law if we will just have an intellectual mind to know that each and every one of us needs to be respected, loved, and because at the end of the day, we should need to have a global self-esteem for us to make our lives more productive than anybody else. So at the end of the day, I will never ever revise this constitutional law because I know the fact that I have given my masculinity but never ever my dignity as a person. Thank you very much.
Adherence to 1987 constitutional processes is upholding the rule of humanitarian law and not of men. If you will revise the Constitution, what part of it will you revise for the sake of what we so-called gender preference and sexual orientation? I'll repeat. Adherence to 1987 constitutional processes is upholding the rule of humanitarian law and not of men. If you will revise the Constitution, what part of it will you revise for the sake of what we so-called gender preference and sexual orientation?
Hello. Ladies and gentlemen, panel group judges, I am here, guys, standing in front of you for the LGBT community. A woman who fighting for our rights, and I am also here for those persons who enjoy fighting rights to others to enjoy. Ladies and gentlemen, that question, it is all about the SOGI bill. Ladies and gentlemen, panel group judges, I'm just only want to influence every single human being watching for tonight's competition that question is all about SOGI bill. And SOGI bill is not just only for the transgender woman like me, not just only for the bisexual, transgender ladies, boy, or even so be it, queers and so more. But ladies and gentlemen, SOGI bill, it is all about also on a straight man and straight woman. Therefore, I believe, my dear friends, that question, it is all about for the equalities of every single human being. Because as far as I know, SOGI bill is for the rest of human being, for the rest of gender. Straight man, straight woman, even a part of the LGBTQ community. Therefore, the only thing that I want to tell to every single human being watching for tonight's competition, that let us only give equal opportunity for the rest of human being. Why? Because if we will give an equal opportunity for every human being, then definitely we have an equal obligation to make this place a better place for each and every single individual, a better place to live in. No more, no less. Thank you.
Adherence to 1987 constitutional processes is upholding the rule of humanitarian law and not of men. If you will revise the Constitution, what part of it will you revise for the sake of what we so-called gender preference and sexual orientation? I'll repeat. Adherence to 1987 constitutional processes is upholding the rule of humanitarian law and not of men. If you will revise the Constitution, what part of it will you revise for the sake of what we so-called gender preference and sexual orientation?
Okay, if I could revise anything from that Bill of Rights, I believe, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to revise it all, but I cannot do anything with that. What I mean is this. We, the LGBT community, has been living a life in this world. And if I were to revise something in this penal code of the constitutional of the Philippines, I believe, ladies and gentlemen, I should add another, and it is protection from cruelty, neglect, and exploitation. Why should I say so? If you said revise, you would need to undergo another process from the very beginning. So why should I revise it if I could just add something? Protection from cruelty, neglect, and exploitation. This would help the gender community or the LGBT community to be proven something in this world. Not only in school, not only in job preference, but in the whole world living in this world. I believe, ladies and gentlemen, the Philippines is such a beautiful country. But if we are going to hand in hand help one another, accept one another, this Bill of Rights will already been done and it has already been said. Therefore, let us just love one another, because that is the main reason that we are all created by God equally. Therefore, let us protect our hearts, protect our loved ones, protect each and every individual in this world, because all of us are special, all of us are created equal, and all of us are loved there up above. Thank you.
I'm not thinking of anything. We're just enjoying and so thankful this evening.
And we are very thankful that you're enjoying the show. So what we are going to tell you is that the question and answer portion is going to be 30% beauty and 70% question and answer. It's just going to be one final question. And the question is,
Okay. Adherence to 1987 constitutional processes is upholding the rule of humanitarian law and not of men. If you will revise the Constitution, what part of it will you revise for the sake of what we so-called gender preference and sexual orientation? I'll repeat. Adherence to 1987 constitutional processes is upholding the rule of humanitarian law and not of men. If you will revise the Constitution, what part of it will you revise for the sake of what we so-called gender preference and sexual orientation?
Thank you. When we adhere, it is a time that we would like to plead or draw a line and talk from the public, specifically that we are in a democratic country. And when we say we would like to come again, amend or revise, because amendment is totally different from revising. Revising is somehow not altering a little bit to make it different, because every now and then, of course, every generation has different type of era. So in that situation about the humanitarian law that would appeal to us at this very point of time, what part of the Constitution I would like to revise, there's only one thing. They say that under the Constitution, I don't know because I don't want to pretend I cannot memorize everything. I always hear this, that no man shall be deprived without due process of law, but it is not happening all over the land. Because every time there is a new kind of regime, pagbago na naman ang Pangulo, there was a certain time that abusing of the power becomes the proof of democracy, which we die on. Namamatay ang demokrasya kapag nilalagyan na ng pansariling hinanakit at hindi na nagiging makatotohanan ang konstitusyon na kailan may niremisa noong 1986 at inaprubahan noong 1987. Are we really equal at this point of time? Do we really serve justice? And for the benefit of everyone, of the Filipino people at this point of time, are we adhering? Are we really trying for that? On the other hand, from the phrase itself, humanitarian benefits, it is not. Because from the word itself, humanity, it has no gender at all. When you try to connect to humanitarian to men, and that is the generalization of everyone as a Filipino itself, everyone deserves. So if I would like to revise the Constitution, one part of the Constitution, that it should be simply because we would like to appear once again that the law must be a law and should not be dedicated by someone in a special offering or in a special process. Remember that in everything that we do, sometimes we have to draw war to obtain peace and unity. Kaya nga nagkakaroon minsan ng digmaan, kaya nga nagkakaroon ng hindi pagkakanuan dahil kailangan natin ipakita na kailanman lalagyan natin ng pangil ang batas at yun ang makatao in a humanitarian way. So I should say this is the only best way that I could remember, but on the other hand, all in all, it's not only about following the Constitution. It's we, the constituent of the Republic of the Philippines, who will do in appearance at definitely cooperating kahit marami pang batas ang ating sinusunod. Kung tayo mismo kumukontra ng kumukontra, walang mangyayari sa batas na ipinapatupad. So in a short manner, I would like to say that's it. I would like to revise that the equalization of the law for us, specifically when we said that no man shall be deprived, obviously there are a lot. Lalong-lalo na sa mga LGBTIQ community. Hindi nabibigyan ng tama. Ayaw nila ng SOGI bill, ayaw nila ipasunod na, ipabata, isabatas ang SOGI bill, which is, listen to this, SOGI bill is for everyone, not for a specific community or a specific group like us. Kasi ang bawat tao, Deadma, wala akong pakialam, diretso ako. Ang bawat tao may sexual orientation, ang bawat tao may gender identity, ang bawat tao mayroong sariling self-expression. So I would say it's just only a matter of saying to the public, because the voice of the people will always be the voice of God. Sorry, it's quite complicated, but all I want to adhere to everyone, you cannot achieve a humanitarian equality for whatever gender we have got unless we, the people itself, will put an action rather than words. Thank you.